Hey, Real Green Ninja here. The video you're about to watch is a supplement to the existing tutorials and help videos already available on the Real Green website. I do take a more casual approach because I'm presenting this information as I would if you called in, although I may have a little fun with it. This video is based upon the information I, as a Real Green technician, would provide using my experience on the help desk. This video was created on my own time to assist with areas of the software that may be waiting for an official help video or tutorial. At the beginning of the training video, I will have the version of the Service Assistant the video was made with. I will also try to be as accurate as possible, but be aware, as Service Assistant updates are released, things may change. I'm using the name Real Green Ninja as not to stand out from the other amazing technicians that I work with. I hope the information in this video helps you, so grab a cup of coffee, and I hope you learn something new. Hey, Real Green Ninja here. Today we're going to talk about the customer's program job screen, so let's begin. I'm just going to go ahead and pull up a customer here. Let's go and pull Jack Thompson. Alright, now when you pull up a customer screen here, you'll see that there's a couple line entries under the services grid, and the first one here, which is the black with white text, that right there is what's called a program. This is a group of related services that are going to be done together throughout the year. Now that's a little bit different than a repeating special. A repeating special may be lawn mowing where you're going out there doing the same thing over and over again. So keep in mind, a program is a group of related services where a lot of the other stuff are pretty much going to be like special jobs and stuff like that. Okay, so the thing is when you go into a program, you'll see that we have multiple rounds in there. Now you can hit the little detail checkbox and spread those out, and then it doesn't matter which one of those you double click on. I usually keep my detail turned off. But when you go into the program, it opens up this screen right here. Now you'll see it's going to have the name of the customer. It's going to have a couple buttons. We'll go back to that. It's also going to have like what kind of program it is, if they're call ahead, and so on and so forth. So, so again, there's a lot of information. So when you go to add a new program to the customer screen, all you're going to do is hit this little icon right here, hit Add Program. It's going to pull up the screen, select the program from the list that you want to add to the customer. It's going to fill in the information if you have it set up under your parameters, and then you can assign it to that customer and then put it in like an active status if you're actually doing the work, or an estimate if you're planning to try to market to them. Alright, so let's go back into the program screen right here, and like I was saying, let's go ahead and go into edit mode so you can see what fields can be changed. So you'll see here again, you can change the status of the program. If you're doing the work, it's going to be active. Alright, if it's something where you're trying to market to them, you might put it in like a no status. Also, if the customer decides they want to cancel, you can cancel it out by setting the cancel reason right there, and we'll talk about canceling reports in a moment, or canceling jobs in a moment. You'll see again, you can select what job you have. Now, if you've posted production, if you've actually done anything on this program or on this job, you will not be able to change it. But you can sometimes, if you haven't done anything at all, and you realize you put the wrong program, maybe you put the gold program when they were supposed to have the platinum or something, you can actually change it. Otherwise, you'd have to delete the program or cancel the program out and then put it onto the customer. Put the correct program on the customer. It's also going to tell you the type, and again, this is something you set up in your parameters when you're setting up the program, as well as a name. If the program as a whole has a call ahead reason, which means you want this call ahead reason to print on every single invoice inside this program, you can select it here by clicking which one you want. Alright, so maybe they're sensitive, so you're going to say sensitivity. It's also going to have the size as well as the 1,000 square feet. Now this size is being pulled, you told the system, or I told the system, is being pulled from the customer's main screen here. So this size might be different. Maybe the full size of the lot is 25 feet, or 25,000 square feet, but maybe the area you're servicing with this particular program is maybe 15. Maybe you're just doing the backyard or something like that. You can change the size. All right. Again, under your product parameters, services, program, specials, program, and then we go to lawn care. I should probably leave this up. You'll see here, this is the unit of measure I'm telling the system to use. All right, and so it looks at the customer screen and says, oh, there it is, and then that's why it pulled that size in there. But like I said, you can change it on the fly if you need to. The difficulty value, the diff value, let's say this property is very hilly, okay, and it requires a little bit of extra effort. You can actually change this difficulty value, and it will do it as a multiplier. And we'll come back to some of these changes, and I'll show you how to change certain information on this program screen. But again, this is a difficulty value, and this is a multiplier for the pricing. So if I put and said, this property is 25% harder than the normal property of 25,000 square feet, I can put in 1.25, which would be 125% or 1.25, and then it's going to ask you, do I want to recalculate the service prices? If I say yes, it's going to multiply these prices here by 1.25. So again, keep in mind, this difficulty value can change the price if you decide to use it. another thing you can do is you can change the source or select your source. Now again, source is your advertising source. If you watched any other videos, or if you're in the training and this is where actually looking at stuff videos, because we've talked about this stuff in the second day of training and we already went to the first day of training. You remember, sources are where they found out about you. Were they a reference? Whether they see your flyer, and it allows you to keep track of your advertising dollar. All right. Billing type. Billing type is how you want to bill this customer. Most people use regular invoice for fertilization type programs, simply because they're legally required to leave something on site saying that they were there, what they applied, and so on and so forth. Even if you're not required, again, this is what most people tend to use for billing type as regular invoice. Now, if you're doing installments, please do not change it to installment on this screen right here. You want to do that through the installments tab. And again, I did a video on how to set up installments. But like I was saying, though, is if, again, you can do your installments, but like I said, please don't do it through this one, because if you set it here installment and forget to set up the installment plan, this customer will never get charged for this program. And again, you can watch the installment video and explain it. You can also add a purchase order. A statement only. Statement only means you plan to do like a monthly billing for this customer. And a lot of times with commercial customers, they won't pay on statements, so you do what's called a monthly invoice. Again, you would still set it to statement only here. Again, I wish the terminology had actually said like monthly billing or monthly invoice or something as opposed to statement only, because it does cause a little bit of confusion. But again, statement only is for when you're planning to do like a monthly invoice or only planning to send this person statements. Credit card. If you set the job to credit card and you're set up with CAW and have all the ducks in a row and everything like that, it will actually charge the customer's credit card when you post production on one of the rounds in this program. Same with ACH. ACH, automatic clearinghouse, like the electronic checks and stuff like that. So again, the billing type here will determine how the system is going to handle it when you plan to send in bills. Now again, I do want to do, or I think I have, or plan to do a video on the different billing types, strictly on that, and show you the different examples. Now, if you're just as a commercial customer and they have a purchase order, or even a residential that wants a purchase order, you can actually add a purchase order number here by just putting that in there and then typing the number in there and saying okay. All right. Last price increase. The last time the prices has been changed. If you've never changed the price on it, it's always going to be the date that you added to the customer screen, because that's, went from blank to whatever the price was. But again, if you change the price, if I went through and changed the price on here, it will indicate the last price increase. As well as if you really want to, you can manually change that. I'm not sure why they did that, but apparently someone wanted it, so they could manually change when the last price increase was performed. And again, you can run, reports, and it takes a look at different things, based on criteria. Discount. If you have a discount that covers the entire program, again, a discount that applies to every single round, you can select the discount here. Now, be aware, though, this discount here will stack with the discount here, and I'll talk about this in a moment. So keep that in mind. It does not go into both places unless you want to double dip that discount. Okay. Program notes to technician. This is going to be notes that you're going to be on the technician portion of the invoice that is going to be on every single round. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Program notes to tech. There we go. And then we also have our program notes to customer. All right. Now again, this is going to be on every single invoice that gets printed for this particular program. Notes to customer. Now, if you use the curly braces, which are kind of like the funky parentheses, which are, let's see, that right there, there is an option when you do your renewals that you can delete everything that's between those curly braces. So for example, let's say you had a client that is watching the grandchildren over the summer, and they don't want you spraying the lawn, or they want you to be, do something special about it or whatever. Maybe you have to give them some sort of notice. And again, you have your call ahead reasons, you can do that. But again, there's something special. Make sure that, the toys are out of the yard. Or again, something that's specific for that season, that's service year. You can put the note between those curly braces, and then when you do your renewals, there is an option to delete everything within the curly braces, everything outside the curly braces, or do nothing. Most people tend to do nothing, but if you do use the curly braces, you can create literally like one service year notes. All right, this expires button here. This expires button field here. What this is telling the system when to stop printing this note. So again, you could say like stop printing on 09/01/2015. Now it's not going to delete the note out of the screen. And what it's going to do, it's just going to stop printing that note on there. You can also search and copy technician notes. Maybe there's a common note that you want to use. Again, you'll see I don't have a ton of stuff in here, but you can go through and search and copy technician notes. And again, it's one of those features not that many people are aware of or play around with. I plan to play around a little bit more in the future, but like I said, I might even come up with a video on how to do that. All right, but like I said, this is, program notes are going to print on every invoice on the technician portion. Program notes to customer are going to print on every invoice in the customer portion. Again, we'll show previews of that. Now down here, this is your route parameters. This is where, or what service route this customer's account is going to be, or this program or service is going to be on. Now you can search for a route. You get that little search thing. You can select which route you want to say, oh, look at all these routes that are in there, and then grab one of those. But most of the time, what you're going to do is you're going to set your route here where it is. Now, again, you can have different routes on different programs and services on the same customer screen, because maybe you might have one route set up for your fertilization truck and one route set up for your mowing truck because they have different equipment. So again, you can go through and have different routes on different programs and services on the same screen. But the route is, again, a piece of selection criteria for when you're pulling your invoices. So if we go to the invoices screen here, you'll see one of the options we can select as route. Also, when you're running reports, so there's a lot of reports out there that will say, what routes do you want. Again, most of the time people tend to run them for all routes, but if you want to get really nitty-gritty, you can. All right, day code. Now, as far as day codes are concerned, this again, it's another piece of filtering criteria. So if you go back to the invoices screen, you'll see there's a section for day code. Okay, and essentially what day code is if you don't have mapping, and this is one of those things where you can tell how the software has evolved over time, because now we can literally say we only want people that can be done on certain days, and there's a way of setting that up. But day code in the past, like 1 might be Monday, 2 might be Tuesday, 3 might be Wednesday, and so on and so forth. I actually saw a customer where 1 was January 1st, and then February 1st was 32, and so on and so forth. So again, they did it by the day of the year, not necessarily, day of the week with 7 days and so on and so forth. But again, like I said, as far as day code, most people nowadays just leave it at 1. Because again, there are things in the software where you can set up saying, the customer can only be done on certain days. Sequence number. Sequence number is a order that they're going to be in when they get thrown on the invoice screen. Now, again, this is a way of doing routing without actually having the routing assistant or mapping assistant. Under the invoices screen, when you hit your get invoice, what it's going to do, it's going to, again, if it has a sequence number, it's going to put it in that order. So if you have a bunch of customers that have a blank sequence number, and there's a couple that have like 10 and 20 or whatever, then what's going to happen is all your zeros are going to be at the top, and then your 10, 20, and whatever is going to be towards the bottom. All right. So again, it's going to actually put them in numerical order based upon that sequence number. Again, it's a one of those things where I plan to do another video if I haven't done one already. I'm over 70 videos, so I'm starting to get a little lost. I actually was thinking I want to do another video on this, or I want to do a video on this, and then I realized I've already done one. So again, sorry about that. But again, like I was saying, the sequence number is going to put them in that order. And if you know for certain the order of the stops for this particular route, then you can go ahead and manually put that in. Temp route means just that. It's temporary. Let's say one of your trucks break down, okay, and you want to put this on temporarily put this on a different route. You can actually set it for the temp route and say, okay, well, this one's actually going to be on testing, the test route, okay. And again, it has its own day code and sequence number. Now, what's going to happen is when you go to pull reports, when you go to pull your invoices and stuff, it's going to be using the test route criteria, the test route information, until you post production on the round, on the next service. So for example, let's say we've already done round 1 and 2, and we're putting the round 3 on the temp route. It's going to stay on the temp route. Again, for reporting purposes and stuff, it's going to stay on the temp route until we post production. Once we post production, it's going to flip back to its permanent route. And, so number 5 here would actually end up being back on that Route 1, RTE 1 right there. So again, keep that in mind. If you're trying to pull up work and it's not quite pulling up and you're trying to figure out what the heck, it's possible someone could have set a temp route in there. And there are easy ways to mass change the route, or the temp route. So, all right, standard price. Standard price is the most common price that's on this list. So if I come over here and I change this to $1,000, you'll see the standard price does not, I'm sorry, $100, the standard price does not change. Now the total price will, okay? So if I go ahead and change it to $500, you'll see the total price is changing. But again, the standard price is not changing because the standard price is the most common price. Now if I go through and I change a bunch of these to 100, okay, you'll see 100 is more common, so therefore 100 is now the standard price. But again, most people just keep it, you know, where it is when they have their price charts in there. And then if I go and change that standard price field, it will ask me, do I want to recalculate price for all services? I hit yes, and it will reset all the prices back. Now again, keep in mind something to be aware of. If you do something like that, like this extra service here, I originally had no price in there. Keep in mind you would have to blank that out if that was the case. But like I said, mine's a kind of a special setup. But like I was saying though, is you'll see the total price is the sum of these. Standard price is the most common. Now, if you want to have average price, all right, there is an option under data, company parameters, general setup, and under miscellaneous. Let's see here. Where was that? There we go. Oh, no, this isn't. Okay, show standard price instead of average price. So again, you could do average price if you really want, but more than likely, the average price of something like this would be 8605 because it's 8605 times 5 divided by 5. So, all right. So again, you can decide how you want certain things to show up. Now, when you post production on one of these services, okay, and as long as the dependent checkbox, which is located under data, product parameters, service program specials, programs, as long as this dependent checkbox is checkmarked, it will update this last service date. And the reason why this last service date is important, especially with fertilizing programs, is when you're pulling invoice, you usually tend to pull days since last service. So if I come in here and I say I want days since last service 30, it has to be at least 30 days since I last went out to that person's property. What it's going to do is it's going to look at this last service date and see if it's before or after this 2 date right here. Because you'll note if I change the number here, let's say 75, you'll see this 2 date changes. So again, this is the field it's looking at when it's asking days since last service, and it's calculating it out for you and everything like that. All right. So again, when you post production on the job, and as long as it's set to dependent, it will update that last service date. And so on. Okay, so again, that's pretty much the top portion right here for now. Now, down here, this is the round grid or the service grid of the rounds that are in this program. You'll see it's going to have each of the services. It's going to have what round number it is, whether or not to do it. If you decide you're never, ever, ever going to do a round for a customer, so for example, let's say this extra added service, I can set N for never do. Okay, when it hits save, it's going to actually save it as an end. Now, if it's a situation where I'm skipping a round, maybe it's too late to do this round in the year, I can actually set it to skip this round and then save. And then now it would let me pull round 2 if I had that don't print invoice of previous rounds not completed or previous rounds not done. So again, you can change the statuses. Now, one thing to be aware of, everything that is everything except for an N will renew into a Y next season. All right. When you print out an invoice, the status will change to a $sign. You can also set to ASAP, and what ASAP is going to do is when you pull your invoices, it does not care about all the other criteria. All it cares about is that you selected that particular service. Okay, and then when you hit get invoices, what's going to happen is you'll see it's going to, like, I actually have one person in the system that's ASAP. It's going to highlight red. Now, if you uncheck it, well, guess what? It's not going to print the invoice, okay? But again, it's a visual reminder that you want to make sure to grab that invoice because you told that customer you're going to come out there as soon as possible. And then when you pull it up on the map, if you have the routing or mapping assistant, it'll actually have part of its halo is going to be red. All right, but again, like I said, this is the status of the jobs themselves. And again, you can give skip codes and so on and so forth. Now, when you go through and let's say you're doing the property, and let's say maybe for the first part of the yard, you're only doing the front yard. You can actually, again, change the size of individual rounds or services in that program. Now, if I do change the size, it's going to ask me if I want to recalculate service. I can hit yes, and you'll see now that the price has changed. Or I can say, nope, it's going to be 8605, and that's how much it's going to be. So, again, I can change this to whatever I want it to be. And then I hit no, and it's going to keep it at the 8605. So, again, you can change the sizes in the program if you haven't posted production yet. Now, if you've posted production, the size and the price and stuff are going to get locked in place. Now, if you do change the size, you're pretty much saying next season or next service year, we're going to use that size instead. So, all All right, let's go ahead and put this back to 25 just to keep consistency. Yes, I guess it didn't really matter. All right, now the A column here, or the price. You can also change the price here. Again, I can go through and change the price without changing anything else, and it's going to charge that customer that much money on their invoice. Okay, there we go. All right, the A column, this is for manual association codes. This is where you say you know for absolutely certain that you have two services or three services that are going to be done on the same visit. You can put a letter or number in here. Again, I've done a video on how to do associations. But like I said, you can put a letter or number in here, and anything that has a matching letter or number for this customer, for this service here, will then print on the same invoice up to 3 services. All right. Discount. Now, if you have a discount specifically for the round, then what you can do is you can go through and assign that. So let's say this is a free visit. You know, maybe they had some sort of promotion. You know, sign up this year, get your first visit for free. We can actually set the free visit. Now, when you do your when you do your discounts codes under financial parameters here and discounts, you can set whether or not it's permanent. If it's permanent, if the check mark here is in the permanent column, it will carry over into the next season. So obviously something like free, you probably wouldn't want to do as permanent unless it's a friends and family discount, but then in that case, you'll actually want to indicate that it's a friends and family discount type of thing, okay? You want to keep those discounts separate. And you might say, well, why would I do it? I mean, if it's a free visit, it's a free visit. Well, the reason why is because you can run reports against the different discount codes. Well, how many people did you actually give a free visit to versus how many people are getting the friends and family discount or whatever, okay? So again, for the individual rounds. Now, keep in mind, like I mentioned before, these codes are stackable on the program discount. So if I come in here and the D10, and again, you can go through and label them however you want, but that tells me right there it's a 10% discount code. If I go through and assign both that D10 to both of them, okay, then what's going to happen is they're going to get 10% off of 10%. All right. So again, it's one of those things where you know, they will stack. So be aware of that. And take that off for now. There we go. Okay. The printed box. This is going to tell the system, or this is going to tell you when this person's invoice was printed. If someone prints out an invoice, it's going to fill in a date here. But if they unprint it, it's going to blank out the date. Also, if there is a printed date, you can actually come over here and change it back to like a Y status, and it will ask you, do you want to mark it as unprinted, assuming it has not been posted production yet. All right. Another really cool trick that a lot of people don't know of: if you double-click the printed checkbox. Oops, let me save it. If you I'm sorry, not checkbox, but if you double click this printed box, it will actually take you to the invoice screen, and it will throw that invoice on there for you for that job for that customer. Okay, so that's kind of a neat trick. The done. When you post production, when you tell the system the work's been completed, it's going to fill in the done date. Now, again, this is when, you know, the transaction date that shows up under history. Now, as with the printed box, you can actually double-click this done date box, and it'll throw the job into the production screen for you, so you can put the information in. Now, because I didn't print the invoice, and I have mine set to assign a technician when you know, I print them out, it did not fill in a technician, because again, I went right to that production screen. And again, I can put my information, hit save, post, and then we'll be good to go. All right. So again, if it's a situation where, you know, let's say, you know, the technician went out to a person's property and they realized their neighbor was done probably a couple days, you know, before or after on the last service or something like that, and he's like, you know what, I'm already here, might as well do this person's property, and then we'll just send them an invoice later. You can come back in here and actually post production on this job, and then turn around and print an invoice after the fact and mail it out to him, and then he could, you know, drop the invoice on the next visit or whatever. But keep in mind with aging and stuff. So again, different scenarios, you know, different procedures and policies and stuff like that. All right, schedule. Schedule is for schedule date. Now, again, most of the time with fertilization programs, you don't use a schedule date. Now, if you have a like an interior pest control program, you might use a schedule date in the program field. But again, it's pretty much you're telling the system when you want to schedule this person. All right, click on edit mode, type in the date. Let's say it's going to be 06/30/2015, and again, that's when you're scheduling this person to go out to do this person's round 1. All right, when you post production, it's going to have notes in the production field here. Okay. I'm sorry, not post-production. But when you have notes of technician, you can put your notes of technician down here, because you'll notice that once I hit the notes field, it goes to this detail view, and we'll talk about detail view in a little bit. But again, that's going to be that technician note. If we scroll over, it will check mark whether or not the service was set up for prepaid when it was posted in production. It will also lock in the date sold, sold by 1, sold by 2. Again, those would be the salespeople that are listed in here. Okay, and again, that information gets locked in place when you go through in post-production. Now, you can go through and change the information. Like, let's say the salesman ends up talking to someone else into getting this extra service. You can come in here, double, let's see here, what was it, edit, double click the date, and you can set the sales information going forward, and so for that particular line item would have that set of sales information. Again, it's usually only done if you have an employee that leaves, or a salesman that sells someone else extra services or something like that. But again, you want to make sure that you can control who accesses that using your security parameters. Over here, production value, again, how much the job is worth to your company, what the renewal price is, what the service code is. This is an important one, because if you're trying to pull a program in something, I can't tell what actual service is that round one. Now, yeah, it says early spring application, but you could have a couple different kind that are like that, have a very, very similar name. So it looks like it's the right service. But if we come over here, it tells me it's LO1, as well as if you have schedule time set up under your detail. All right, so again, you can scroll across this grid. You can also move things around. If you want your associations to be towards the front, you can grab that association, move it over here, and make that in the front. So you can, again, even modify the way these columns are laid out. Okay. So in this yellow area, this is estimate information. If you're using this lightning bolt and you're filling in information as you're doing stuff, okay, like the estimate given by and so on and so forth, and reject and all that stuff, it will fill in this information here. You can also manually put the information as well. If you want to print out an estimate, you can actually print out one directly for the customer. I always gotta hit that save button. Hit that little printer icon. When I hit the printer icon, it will take me to the estimate screen for that customer, for that job. You can even put in who requested the estimate, who took the estimate, when it was printed. We'll fill in the printed date, who actually did the estimate, as well as what date it was given. You can also indicate what date the customer was called back. You can also add a new call for the call log. Again, you may want to watch the video on the call log, as well as who referred the person to your company. All right. So again, you have a bunch of stuff you can put in there. You can also text information to an employee. All right, and then you can text it out to them and say, hey, I just noticed you're in the area. If you can go ahead and drop by the house and do an estimate for them. All right. Now, again, estimate statuses are those yellow ones, the 0 through 4. Okay, canceled are the red. Active or the green. Now, when you actually sell a job, when you actually put in an active status, then you're going to fill in your green fields down here, and it's going to have like your sold date, the date you actually sold the job, who sold it. If you have two salesperson, or two people that you want to indicate sold it, you can do that. Now, be aware, though, if you run a sales report and you have two salespeople in there, let's say it's a $500 job, one salesperson's number is going to be $250. The other salesperson's number is going to be $250 as well. All right, because again, the total of the job is $500, but each of them are getting 50% credit. You can also, if you're required to do confirmation, you can put the confirmation in there. What employee confirmed it. If you're setting up an installment plan, you can even indicate which employee set up their installment plan. Again, sorry it's popping off this field, but at least you should be able to see that first person on my employee list. So again, you can go through and put that information. Most people that don't need it don't bother with it. All right. So again, it's up to you if you want to do that. Over here, it's going to tell you what the service here is. It's also going to ask for. You can also put in a renewal date. If you're like an interior pest control company and you have to do renewals each month, again, that'd be a completely different video to talk about that. But again, you can put in the renewal date, and then when you go to do your renewals under Tools and Process Renewals, it's going to ask you what is the renewal date range that you want to select. And as long as the service or program falls between that renew date, then it could renew, assuming you have all the rest of your criteria set up correctly. All right. When a job gets renewed, it's going to check mark the renew checkbox. This is not something that you might want to do automatically, because you want to make sure to have it renewed before you actually check mark it as renewed. And again, it will warn you. And you'll see it also prevent from renewing the automatic process, because what happens is when you process the renewals, one of the things it does is it looks to see, is this checkbox checkmarked? If it is, skip over this job, because obviously it's been renewed. Whether or not they have one for the next season, someone somewhere told the system that this job has been renewed. All right. Auto renew. This checkbox tells the system to auto renew this customer. All right. I'm sorry, for this job for this customer. So again, for example, if we go to Tools and Process Renewals, as long as we have the program up here check marked, it's going to auto-renew this person, or it's going to renew this person because we have this auto-renew check marked. Okay, again, assuming you don't have the renewed checkbox check marked. So like I was saying is, and I've gotten quite a few calls when people are doing process renewals, and they go to renew people, and for some reason, it's not renewing them. Well, this auto-renew checkbox was actually unchecked in the parameters. It was actually unchecked in the parameters, and because it was unchecked, everyone they added it to then was also unchecked. So the system said, oh, don't renew that. All right. So again, it's one of those things we get a call quite often during renewals, about that type of thing. Now, there are ways of overriding it. We can, on the process renewals, go through and say, you know what, all services disregard auto-renew, or we could correct the parameter and then say services that are default to auto-renew. Because again, remember, a lot of the information, if you watch the parameter series of videos, a lot of the information you put in those parameters is what gets pulled into this job screen when you set this customer up. Confirmation letter. If you are required to legally send that person a confirmation letter, then you can have this check marked in your parameters. And again, when it adds to the customer, it will be check marked. When you generate your confirmation letters under under print and then letters, confirmation letters, when you actually print the letter out for that customer, for that job, it will uncheck itself. And that's how you can tell that that letter has been printed or generated. Okay, it could have been emailed, could have been printed and mailed, and so on and so forth. But again, if this is unchecked, either A, you didn't have it set up in parameters in the first place, B, someone went in there and unchecked it, or C, someone actually generated that confirmation letter through the system. All right? In this area right here, where it says hold from, hold to, hold reason, if you watch the customer screen tab video, then you'll know that holds are where you're saying, I'm temporarily pausing services for this customer. Well, you can do it for the individual service or programs themselves. So again, the customer doesn't have to be on hold, but you can actually put the job itself on hold. So again, it works the same way as the one on the customer. When you select your date range, let's go ahead and select the 7th through the 13th, you'll see it's not any color. It's still the same background color. But as soon as that date range falls within today's date, you'll see it turns blue. And this will tell you that it's currently on hold. All right. When it finally gets off of hold, so if we go ahead and set this here, when it finally gets off of hold, you'll see it turns back to that whitish color. All right. You can also put your hold reason in. Maybe the customer requested it. Maybe they're on vacation. Again, you put your hold reason in. When you save it, you'll be able to pull other jobs for this customer, but you won't be able to pull this one, assuming you don't do any overrides or anything like that. You won't be able to pull this job because, again, this is on hold. Maybe they're having a party and they don't want you coming out and fertilizing. So just to keep it safe, you could put the program on hold, but you still might be able to go out there and do the chloration because you're not spraying chemicals down with an aeration. All right, and this area is also where reject information is. If they rejected your estimate, you hit this little yellow button here, and you'll see it change the reject date, reject reason. Again, you put your information in. If you use a lightning bolt and you tell it to gave estimate not sold, it will fill in. Ask these fields which you'll fill in, and it will fill it in on the job for you. If the customer cancels a job, so you'd come up here and let's say put canceled, you'll see this area changes red. This is the cancellation information. Again, you're going to put the cancel date if it's not today, or maybe they canceled last week and you just got around to doing it. You can change that date. Also, you can change who canceled it as well as put in your cancel reason. If there's like a cancellation number that you want to pull up, you can hit that little button. It'll give you your cancellation number. So again, it's one of those things where when you cancel customer out, there's information you're going to put in there because you can run reports. Now, you'll notice, even though I put the person back in active, this cancel information still stayed there. That has happened where people have canceled out customers' jobs, but they run a cancel report and say, well, what the heck's going on here? So again, it's one of those things where you may have to go in there and double-check information and change it if need be. Let's see here. Where was it? Okay, there we go. I'm just going to set that cancellation date back to blank. I know I haven't canceled the service. Oh, and then blank it out. I know I haven't canceled the service. Hold on. Bear with me for one moment. There we go. I just want to cancel this out. Because, again, it can cause some wonky things to happen with, like, reports and stuff like that. Or if you're trying to pull work or whatever, I've seen some unique scenarios. And, again, it's one of those things we spend half an hour digging around trying to figure out what the heck happened, then realize, oh, there's something in there and it's causing it to go wonky. So, again, keep in mind if you play around with the software, you might want to make sure things are saved. Or even if you make a change, hit this little undo arrow, and that will undo all your changes and then go back to do whatever you're doing. So, wow, we're already 32 minutes in the video. Okay, all right. So the last thing I want to talk about on the program screen here is the detailed view. I showed you a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry. I also got to talk about the buttons here. I talk about when you hit on like the notes right here, it goes in the detail. Now again, this is details about the particular round itself. All right, you'll see there's a row of icons. We have a little printer icon if you want to print the invoice. It's the same as double-clicking that printed box like I showed you earlier. You can also send the job to the scheduling work pool. And again, if you watch a crash course on scheduling or how to use a scheduler, you can see it gets sent over there. You can also put in a start and stop window. This right here is the old cable company. Yeah, we'll be there between noon and 2. All right, you can put that information in there if the customer ever calls you up. So yeah, this is what you're set to do. By default, it's 12 a.m. to 12 a.m. Now, one thing to be aware of: if you have routing assistant, it now takes this time window into consideration. In that, if you have two customers, two neighbors, and you do your routing and stuff, and the first neighbor you could do at 8 o'clock because it's the closest one, but the second neighbor you have something in here 10 a.m. to let's say 12 a.m. because that's the earliest you can go to the person's stop. It will actually go to a different stop instead of the neighbor, let you do the work until it hits about 10 a.m. or when it predicts 10 a.m. and then come back to that neighbor's neighbor, or that person's neighbor. So again, keep in mind this time window is now important as far as the routing assistant. Mapping assistant never took this in consideration. Again, this is one of those things we found out after routing assistant launched. And people are like, well, why do they have me do this house? I'm doing the house next door, but they're having me go way across town to do this other house here and then come back to his neighbor. Well, it's because they had time windows set. All right. Again, with a little pile of gold coins, anytime you see that, it goes to the payment screen. Now, one thing to be aware of: if you do the payment screen, it will actually, again, take you here, and you can go ahead and do it. But because this person has been prepaid for those fertilization, that's why it's not showing. And then you can also text your employee. Now, if the job has been paid for, meaning money's been applied to it and it's been completely satisfied, it will then fill in a paid date here. When you're running reports, let's see, a good report to do. There we go. And you have it where it's looking for pay date. This is the date that it would be looking at on this particular report if we put information in there. All right. Production value. Again, how much is this job worth to your company? All right. Again, very important when you're doing production reports and stuff like that, because even though this price is $86.05, you're giving this person a 10-cent discount. $8.60 or 61 cents, I guess, if you round up. So again, the customer is not paying that amount, but the value of the work is still that $86.05. This is why it's always a good idea, if you're going to give discounts, don't change the price. Use a discount code. Even if it's literally a single discount code for a single customer for a single job, use a discount code. Because if I go here and I change and say, okay, well, let's say instead of $86.05, I'm going to discount it down to $50. All right, and then we're going to take the discount code off. All right, again, you'll notice the production values change to $50 also. So again, keep in mind that it's always the best practice to use the regular price that you would normally charge and then put in your discount code. There we go. Okay, then put in your discount code. Because this production value, again, if you're running production reports, you want to make sure to keep track of the correct information that you're doing, okay, or the correct amount of work your company's actually performing. All right, schedule date and time. Again, this is a schedule date that they put up in here. You can also put a specific time that you plan to be. Again, usually with fertilization, you don't worry about that. You pretty much just route and then hit them as you go along. But with interior pest control, it's especially important simply because you told the customer, I'm going to be there at 2 p.m. And then, of course, you'd be using the scheduler and so on and so forth. But like I was saying, is you can put the scheduled date and the scheduled time in here, as well as when you post production. When this done date's filled out, it's going to show that posted date. Now, if you've reversed production on a service, what it's going to do is going to create a second line entry for that service, and it's going to highlight the one that was yellow, or it's going to highlight the one that was reversed yellow. Now, it will also check mark this it was reversed here. All right. So again, a lot of the stuff, the detail, you may not even touch unless it's something specific that you're going into, like setting up the schedule date and schedule time. But again, there's a lot of information in this detailed view. Now, if for some reason you had to unprint the invoice, go to print invoices. Let's see your undo invoice print. You'll see over here there's actually a reason not done drop down that appears when you put an invoice number in, and you can select this is why it was not done. And again, this is something you'd set up in parameters, the reasons that the invoice wasn't completed. Now, if you actually unprint an invoice, you can hit this little area, this little icon here, and it will tell you, it'll give you a list of when it was reversed. All right, and it'll also tell you what the reason was if you put it in there. So again, right now I don't have any unprinted invoices for this customer, so there's no history. But again, you can see if you were to unprint the invoices, you can go through and see what what the reasons were for being unprinted. Again, if you put them in there. Now, one thing also to be aware of, a lot of people usually don't unprint invoices. They'll hold off on the invoice they haven't gotten to, and then they'll put it with their next batch. Now, but if it's a case where, the invoice gets destroyed or something like that, or the price has changed, you need the price to be reflected correctly, then you would unprint, correct the pricing information, and then reprint it. Okay. Promise. The promise checkbox right here. This is when you're telling the customer that you are for certain coming out on this date. It's a little bit different than scheduled. Setting up scheduling parameters. But again, you're saying you promise you're going to be there. All right. Again, usually with pest control, you're pretty strict on that. But with other type of services, if you're doing an aeration, you promise I'm going to be there on the July 15th because we need to make sure your irrigation company comes out and flags your irrigation system. So again, you can promise you're going to be on a certain date. And then what happens is when you pull your invoices, let's see here. So there we go. You'll see this promise is purple. It will actually highlight the scheduled field saying that you had promised to go out to do that person's property on that schedule date. So again, like I was saying, it's a feature that not a lot of people are aware of, but it's very useful if you need it. And also there are some, I talked to one customer where they had a few of their clients that had very unique situations, and they wanted to make sure that those people really stood out. So they actually used that promise checkbox as an indicator. So another example of kind of bending the software to make it work the way you want to. All right. Text. These are texts that are assigned to the job. If you print out your invoices, it will throw the text name in there. Or when you post production, it will have that technician, or if you change technician on production, it will update this text field down here. Again, it's just the technicians that plan to do the work. Renewal, when you do your renewals at the end of the season or at the end of the service year, this is the information that's going to carry over. So again, you can change this. Maybe you want, for certain next year you're going to renew it at $100, or maybe you manually change the price and you want to make sure, because again, if we come up here and change this price, all right, it's going to update the other information as well. Let me put this back to where it was. 86.05. There we go. Okay, and then 86.05. All right, give me 1 second here. Okay, so again, you can have a different price than the production and renewal price. But like I was saying, if you come in here and you make changes to stuff, then it can change those down there, and you want to make sure to update yours accordingly if you decide to manually change the price. Again, that's why we always recommend use discount codes, because it's going to carry over for the full price. The production value is going to be the full price. And when you do your price increases, you're always going to be doing them on the new season. You're never going to be increasing your prices in the current season unless something happens midway through, and then, of course, that's a completely another video to talk about. Man-hour rate. If you're charging by man-hour rate, again, that's something you set under your product parameters, services, program specials, and under the services themselves. You have the different kinds of pricing. If you do set it up for like man-hour rate and put that information in there, that's the information that's going to be pulled over into this screen here. All right. Estimated man hours. Again, I have mine all set up for price charts. So if we go to product parameters, price chart, and we go to the price chart that I believe it's using, this one right here, you see I have estimated minutes and how long it should take. It's going to throw that information in there. If it's blank, that means you either don't have your price chart set up, or normally have do by man hours. And again, you can always go through and say it's actually going to take 10 hours or 10 minutes instead of whatever, and it will ask you if you want to update all service price. I'm going to hit no for now. So again, you can most people don't even mess with that, but again, it's there if you need to. You can also indicate when you call the customer about this particular round, hit this little date field and fill that in there. Round notes to technician. Round notes to tech, round notes to customer. Can never type and talk at the same time. See, start talking and all of a sudden I can't type. All right, again, these are going to be notes that are specifically for this service. All right, so again, program notes, all invoices for all rounds that are printed. Round notes, only for the particular service that you're printing out. All right. The expiry date works the same way. It just will stop printing that note afterwards. Now, over here, it's going to show you what the charge is, discounts. Again, this is a prepaid service, so it's getting an additional discount. Once you post production, these numbers get locked into place. All right. And so again, that's a detail, and each of these rounds has their own detail view. You'll notice as I'm flipping through, things pop up, disappear, because each of these have their own rounds have their own detailed view. All right. So once you got all your information, again, you save it, and then you can pull your work and stuff like that. Now, as far as the buttons across the top here, one of the most important buttons, at least as far as tracking who's doing what, is this little icon that has a letter I with a word balloon. You click on that, it shows you the change log. This is one of those ones where we use it quite often on the help desk. Let's say, for example, the customer calls up and says, "Oh, we know for certain." By the way, you guys are our customers. We know for certain we printed out this invoice, but it's showing up as a Y status. It's showing it as being unprinted. All right. One of the first things I can do is go to the change log, and it's going to tell me whether or not it's been unprinted, and it will actually say like change from Y, or from the $ to a Y. All right, and I'll say, well, you're actually going to have to talk to whoever RGN is and ask them why on 6/14/2015 at 9:21 a.m. that they unprinted the invoice. All right, so again, this change log is very, very, very useful to keep track of who's doing what. And this is also why we always tell people, even if you want the employee to have full rights and everything, and they're pretty much doing your work for you and type of things or whatever, or doing whatever you'd be doing, they want to have their own login. Give them the same security level, so give them the same access rights and everything, but have their own login. So that way, when they log in the system can keep track of that. Okay, so again, you'll see changing the hold date, status changes. I mean, changing from 9 to 9. Again, it doesn't keep track of everything, but it does keep track of quite a bit of information. And again, it allows us to go through and figure out, well, who did what, and you'll see, who changed the price. Oh, well, the price was changed by so and so and so, stuff like that. Now, again, I kept changing them back to the original price. That's why the prices are where they are, just from this to this, whatever. So again, it does keep track of a lot of information. All right. Now up here, there actually is a diagrams and documents for the job itself. All right. The customer screen has its diagrams and documents, and this is where most people will actually store them. But as far, let me give it a few seconds here. There we go. But as far as the job itself, you can have your own diagrams and documents. And then, have its own diagrams and documents. And when you process renewal, you can tell it to move those diagrams and documents to the renewal. So again, most people tend to stick with the diagrams and documents on the main customer screen, but again, you can assign it specifically for the customer's job, and you can watch the diagrams and documents parameters video or the customer tabs video or whatever, and it will explain all the little buttons and stuff down there. All right. Also, again, usually with fertilization, you don't do scheduling. All right. So therefore, it doesn't matter how the schedule is built out. But if you have a fertilizer program or something like that, sorry about that. I just got a text. Had to pause the video there for a moment. Okay, so if I remember correct, we're talking about the little scheduling repeat thing here. So again, sorry for repeating myself, but usually with fertilization, you don't have to worry about days between services and stuff, because you do that off the invoice screen saying days since last service. But if you want, you can set up the schedule by hitting this little icon right here, and it's going to show up your repeating criteria. All right. So, for example, let's say this is like an interior pest control service or a program, and you want to make it so it's every 45 days. Then what you can do is you can click this little day icon, or might as well go into edit mode there. I've been working here over a year and a half, and it's still that edit mode button still gets me. All right. So again, we hit days, and we say it has to be 45 days. All right. Now, once we've done that, let me expand this out a little bit so you can see. Once we've done that, oops, I guess it didn't like that. There we go. Oh, I get a little wonky here. Hold on. Let me do this. There we go. Once you've done that, what you can do is you can actually indicate, again, what day of the week you want to do. So let's say this is going to be done on Saturdays. Hit Update Schedule. It's going to ask you if you want to reschedule the first one. We're going to hit No, and you'll see it's going to build out the schedule until it hits December 31st of 2015. It hits the end on date, if you put an end on date here, or until it runs out of services to add. So again, because I have such a long time length, as well as I'm doing, starting in the middle of June and so on and so forth, you'll see it actually stops before those last two rounds. Again, normally with fertilization, you don't have to worry about this, but because it's part of the program screen, I wanted to explain what it is. So if I actually come in here and change this to 15 days, update schedule, no, I don't want to schedule the first one again, you'll see it builds it out. Now, if these are the dates you for pretty much certain want to do it, you can also lock the schedule by hitting the little lock button here, and then the dates won't change. If it's not locked, when you post production, what it's going to do is going to look at this number of days and then find the next available checkbox and schedule the next service for that schedule date, and so on and so forth. So it's going to base it off the done date as opposed to being, what's set in the schedule date here. All right. So again, you can update it as you go along, because again, things happen. Maybe the customer went on vacation, forgot to notify you, and so their schedule for their interior pest got shifted. But again, like I said, most of the time with fertilization, you guys don't have to worry. Oop, I didn't mean to save that. Dang it. Oh well, I guess I can't undo it now. Actually, I can. I can go to edit mode, and I can set it to none, and then I'm gonna check that. I wonder if that would blink it out. Nope. And I'd have to go through and delete those schedule dates. But again, like I said, if you need them or if you want to use them, you can use them. If you don't, you don't have to. And go ahead and schedule it. Actually, we'll delete them all. All right, save. And that can toggle turning that scheduler repeat thing on and off, and so on and so forth. Now, you can also set in condition codes or targets. Again, this is why you're going out there and doing the service. Maybe you're doing it because they have brown spots. Again, this would be for the program itself, and there are condition code reports you can run. So, this is one of the longer videos. Hope you had a lot of coffee for this one. And I hope that you learned some new stuff. And, of course, if you ever have any questions or if you need any assistance, you can always call Real Green. They'll be more than happy to assist you. Other than that, you